Jonny and James.
They are easily led.
Welcome, one and all, to Easily Led, the podcast that's going to make you feel all warm and cuddly inside. I'm Jonny. I'm the co-host here. You may know me from Jonny Watson Gaming, and I am joined with James, and he is AKA Scruffy Crow. So, James, how you doing, mate?
All good, all good. Exciting to finally get this recording on the way, on the road. I don't know.
Yeah, we've been talking about doing this for some time now.
Yeah.
And we've actually sat down and just thought, let's just go ahead and record ourselves talk a load of rubbish about wargaming. So,
sounds
James,
good.
we've got a little itinerary, haven't we, that we're going to probably stick to throughout the series of these podcasts. So please just fill the listeners in. What we got?
Okay, so the plan's going to be going forward. At this little section, we will look at sort of the recent news, recent releases. Talk about anything interesting that's come up, anything we thought is sort of newsworthy and noteworthy. Then we'll sort of move on to our sort of main topic for each episode. This episode, we're going to be looking, as the title suggests, at our thoughts on the state of wargaming at the moment.
Yep, looking forward to that.
And then each episode will end on a recommendation of a company or Kickstarter or something along those lines that we've thought was pretty decent.
Oh, cool. Sounds perfect. So moving on to the news then, or sort of the preambles as such, shall we, for this first episode, just sort of explain maybe what we're sort of working on at the moment, currently on with our projects that we've got on the desk and stuff like that?
Yeah, sounds good. So I'm working on Stargrave at the moment mostly. I have printed out a lovely Stargrave crew, and I've just switched to a new resin on my printer, and they look absolutely amazing. And actually, they're a really nice change from what I've been painting recently. Yeah,
I mean they look awesome actually. I don't know. You might put a picture up on the screen of one of the guys you've painted, and yeah, he looks beautiful.
Yeah, they're nice models. I also only have 2 weeks left to paint the rest of my Oathmark army, or at least enough of it for a decent outing. Because actually, yeah, that's probably something that is noteworthy. The first ever UK Oathmark gaming event is going to be on the 2nd of October.
Nice. So are you looking to get down there? Are you?
Yeah, I've got my ticket bought already.
Oh, nice.
There's some tickets left. So if anyone else is interested, I'm sure we can squeeze you in the last minute. Just jump on the Oathmark Facebook group and take a look. Matt Biggs would be the guy to contact. And yeah, it's looking out to be a pretty sort of casual. It's definitely not competitive. Narrative games. Like-minded Oathmarkers. Nice. As it's the first event ever, we don't really know what to expect. So.
Yeah, sounds
it easy,
brilliant, mate. What army are you taking down there?
Oh,
you've got a couple. Yeah,
that's the thing. I wanted to take my new sort of woodland themed army, sort of humans and halflings.
Yeah.
But there's a fair amount of work left in those guys before they're ready for an outing. So I might take the dwarves.
You got to get some painting on, boy.
Yeah. I reckon I'm going to need to do all 40 archers at least.
Yeah. God. I don't envy you there, mate.
But they're going to be pretty monochrome. They're going to be pretty much green. So might be possible.
So anything else you got on that, or just what you've described there?
Well, I said the other bit of news is that I am currently working on restarting my channel, Scruffy Crow. So I've got next couple of days I'll be getting some videos ready.
For those of you that either don't know or don't follow Scruffy, he's been out of his channel for about a month or so.
About a month, yeah.
Yeah, your computer broke down, didn't it, mate?
Yeah, my computer broke. I thought I'd take
ordered a summer break.
Yeah, ordered a new computer, and I thought I'd take advantage of some of the warmer evenings and have a bit of a break. Didn't want to get burnt out.
Do some DIY or some gardening, didn't you?
Yeah, finish the garden up. Yeah. So what are you working on at the moment then?
Right. Okay. So actually, very much like yourself, during the summer period, I really had a bit of a had a massive lull in the love for the hobby. I just couldn't bring myself to get to the table and get some painting going. And sometimes what you need to kick yourself back is a bit of a new project. So I've gone backwards in what I do. I've gone to 40k second edition, and I'm just fallen back in love with the old GW models, all the second edition models, all the Road Trader models. I've just been spending way too much money on eBay, picking up all the models I wanted when I was a kid. It's been so good just picking up those models, and I'm just slowly painting them up. So I am doing them as a Howling Griffin army. I've got one unit done so far, which is the Rhino. We'll put a picture up on the screen.
Yeah, I'll shoot some images up
for that. So that's the first thing I've done. Currently just working on some Marines to go with that. But I've got I'd say probably looking at around about sort of 1,500 point army, sort of old money, let's say. So that's that project, and I've always got two projects on the go. I have got a regiment of Highlanders as well, so for black powder sitting on my desk, which have been staring at me for about 6 months.
You giving them tartan?
Oh yeah, I have to. I can't not. the historical gamers will not accept just a green skirt. You've got to be a bit better than that. So I've got to get the tartan on them. So I've never painted tartan actually. I've seen a few really good painting tutorials, so I'll probably just nick a few bits from them and sort of do my own thing.
Really thin down paints, I found, almost like a little glaze.
Yes, and that's what I've seen
for the first stripes, and then when the two glazes like overlay each other, you get the darker patch, and then it stops you having to try and draw the squares in. Yeah.
So that's definitely one of the sort of things I've been watching on YouTube. So yeah, I'll be doing something similar to that. So yeah, I've got them on the table. So I do need to get onto them, but I'm loving the 40k, the second edition, way too much to go onto them at the moment. But they're kind of like their fallback. And then I've also got, I haven't got it yet, but you have printed me out a Stargrave troop.
I'm looking at them now. Yeah, there's a dozen squats, retro style squats on my desk, and with all the positions for Stargrave. Yeah,
their quality as well. I think you only just got them from Thingiverse or somewhere like that, didn't you? The files at least.
Free files. I'll punch an image up with the. And give credit to the guy. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Because they are fantastic little sculpts actually, and I actually can't wait to paint them. So looking forward to that. So I've played Frostgrave. I haven't played Stargrave, so I'm assuming it's something fairly similar. But that's going to be another little adventure for me to get down. Last game I played was, and it's the last battle report on my channel, which was. Altar of Freedom.
Altar of Freedom? Not heard of that one.
Yeah, so it's a 6 mil American Civil War game.
Oh, right.
It's actually a fantastic little game. I had me and the G Dog. We had a great time playing that. Actually, I've got to paint more up on that to make do the next scenario, because really impressed with that game actually. If you're thing is, I know you're not massively interested into the historical side of things, wargaming, and
all small scales.
Yeah, it's a shame, because honestly you'd really enjoy it. It's a really good game. It's very tactical, but anyway, so that was my last game I played. But yeah, really for me it's the 40k. That's where my head's at the moment. I'm just really enjoying it. I'm gonna bash through and try and get as many of these Howling Griffins done as possible. So yeah, there you go.
Cool. So then on to the main topic for this episode, for episode 1, the state of wargaming. What is your thoughts on the state of wargaming at the moment?
Well, this is a really interesting question actually, because I think depending on who you are, what type of gaming you do, you're going to have a different answer to this.
Yeah.
Now, GW, albeit I don't particularly like what they do anymore, are probably doing better than they've ever done before.
I believe so. Yeah.
So something's telling you that the state of wargaming isn't that bad if people are spending the money at GW for a start. Then what you do have now, which you never had before, of all these micro companies now doing, they're either doing files for printing or small little games, rule sets. They're absolutely everywhere. Maybe to the point of saturation, which may not be a good thing. But that also means there's people out there that really want to push the hobby.
Yeah.
So that for me sort of suggests, and I find a lot of that is actually more on the sort of fantasy and sci-fi side of things. Okay. I feel like the fantasy side and sci-fi side of the hobby is doing well. I don't see it falling and crashing. There's going to be some big changes, especially with the 3D printing now. I think a lot of companies are going to struggle because of that. The 3D printing are becoming much more accessible, and you only have to see what you produce with your 3D printer, the quality that you can get. I mean, that's now you've got that new resin as well. The quality is as good, if not better, than some of the models you'd buy from one of the, the micro companies. So
yeah, well, we'll save some of that for a later podcast.
Exactly. But the point of the matter is,
yeah, no, I know what you mean.
So that can be a troublesome side for the companies, let's say, of.
And just a background for everyone, I've only got a Mars Pro 2, which is just it's on the higher end of the resin, the current cheap resin printers, but it definitely still falls in the category of a cheap resin printer.
Yeah.
It's certainly not anything outstanding.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think where the hobby is falling, it could be more towards the historical side of things. Now, I might be talking out of turn here, but I feel that you've got a lot of die-hard historical gamers, but it is an aging population. Yes, I like to play, and maybe it's a case that you get into, like most people, you get into something like 40k, and you then go on to some of smaller games, sci-fi, and then you might fall into historical, which is kind of what happened to me. But I don't know that's going to happen to enough people for it to really move on. Warlord Games do a really good show of pushing the historical side of things, but even they, if you see their releases, most of their releases they seem to be more to the sci-fi side of things, like or the fantasy side of things, Erewhon and stuff like that. I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, there's only so much they can release historically, because if they've done a lot of the units, they've done a lot of the units.
Well, they're going through Bolt Action again now, aren't they? They've just re-released the British Commonwealth troops. Yeah, and I think they redid some of the Germans, some of the earliest plastics. But I mean, I'm looking at the Warlord website now, and they are primarily historical. Company.
Oh, definitely.
And I think they've tried to, like you mentioned, there's definitely been a big upsurge in fantasy, historical, fantasy sci-fi games. Yeah. And I think every now and again they try and take advantage of that. Where they picked out, they released Erewhon, and a few other little bits and pieces, but then they never seem to take it anywhere.
Yeah, don't capitalize. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe because they are primarily a historical gaming company.
Yeah.
My worry for the historical side of things, because I really do, I get a kick out of painting these historical stuff and playing them. Like I say, playing the ACW only fairly recently. It was a really fun game. My fear is that the youngsters won't take that on. And that's where the hobby might slow down. But I think in terms of big companies like GW and Mantix and stuff, whether they're big or not, but them sort of get companies where it's all sort of sci-fi fantasy, they seem to be doing pretty well as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm seeing it from my point of view, but yeah, that's kind of where I feel the hobby's going. It's going well on one side, but maybe not so well on the other. In terms of, because there is definitely a big split between the two. I think you find very few people sort of jump ship, whether they're either a sci-fi and fantasy player or they're a historical player. You seem to get that divide there.
I think some of it's what captures you. Even if it's the fiction and the fluff. If you're interested in World War II, I mean, I know I've met people that are interested in World War II as a passing thing, or as like the pulp adventures rather than actual history. And then from that, they can be more interested in like bolt action, because bolt action. I'm sure there's historical gamers out there that will confirm this. A lot of people don't count bolt action as genuine historical gaming. It's Hollywood. It's Hollywood World War II, isn't it?
Yeah. The reason that is a lot of gamers will see it as the rules aren't they're not drilled down enough. They don't make it. They don't make it feel historical enough.
It's not a simulation. It's a game.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas, and that you get a lot of criticism as well with historical gamers for Black Powder for the exact same thing.
Right.
It's more of a game, and it's not the feel of the historical that that unit should work like this sort of feel can be lost in Black Powder a little bit. Whereas other games will have a bit more to it that will create that feel. So they do sort of those Warlord do suffer with that a little bit, but hey, they're great games, both of them. So I enjoy them.
So my thoughts on the whole thing it's fairly similar to yours. There's definitely been a huge resurgence, and I don't think it's from wargamers necessarily. I think a few years ago, obviously Kickstarter took off, and it meant that any small company could bang out a game. Was it 2012? Arcworld came on the scene, and that was about the same time as a lot of other things did, and some of them did well, some of them didn't. Cool Mini or Not became a massive publisher from from being a website where you post you posted your minis there, and then they became a publisher. And I think that's had sort of positive and negative sort of aspects. Like you said, I think if you end up with too many games, you have to be really careful what games you buy into, because I think it's very easy, and I've got a number of them, of games that I've bought rule books for, a few models for. Sometimes I know I'm probably not going to get a game of it, and sometimes I'll hope I will, but it's a niche hobby, and then you end up with breaking it down into smaller niches.
Yeah, the problem is it's so niche that only you play it.
Yeah,
in your group of friends, and then so it just doesn't get played unless you're good enough or quick enough to paint 2 armies and say, "Look, I've got this game, I've got 2 armies, let's play." Which that's a tall ask.
Yeah,
for any hobbyist.
And I think Games Workshop, as you say, they're the most well-known brand. They've got a shop on every high street. They, Warhammer. If someone says, what do you do as a hobby, it's sometimes easier to say Warhammer than it is miniature wargaming. I've not played anything, that's actually has Warhammer in the title really much in 5 years, but that's it's become like the Hoover and Biro and stuff.
Yeah, of course it is.
It's one of those things. So I think Games Workshop's doing really well. I think it helps that they've got this built-in sort of cult-like crowd that will only play. So they'll be like, "Oh, what games do you what smaller games do you play?" And they'll say Warcry or Kill Team.
Yeah.
And they won't. And it's
they won't accept there's other games out there. No, and there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah,
a lot.
And they're unless it's got that Games Workshop brand on it, they're not really interested. But one trend that I'm worried about is I've noticed so years ago we played War Machine. There wasn't many competitors to Games Workshop around. Privateer Press with War Machine was one. Malifaux was quite big.
Yep, it was. Yeah,
there was still Bolt Action. And I can't really think of any of us that were huge. X-Wing when that came out. Fantasy Flight Games I'll mention in a second again. But I think you ended up with these for stuff like X-Wing, for War Machine, you ended up with these quite big fan base, like dedicated fan bases, and it was peeling people away from Games Workshop.
Yeah, well, I mean, quite especially Mark II War Machine was just simply a better game. You couldn't deny it. If you started playing War Machine first and then went over to play 40k, you'll say, "What the hell's this?"
It's barely even a game.
Rubbish.
I mean,
Yeah, you would, but you're right. No, sorry, I'll let you carry on, James.
Yeah. So, but I think, I mean, I've not heard much about Malifaux recently. That seems to have dried up. War Machine appears to have committed, suicide overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never seen a company destroy their game and reputation.
Third edition destroyed that game overnight. It was unreal, and it wasn't just that. I think they started trying to be all. They started putting all the cards you needed, all the stat cards, online and on an app, which they would then change constantly.
Oh, you needed to be online in order to play War Machine.
Yeah.
It almost became like a hybrid game.
Yeah, but you could never remember anyone's stat line because they would change it.
Yeah, and at the time I didn't have a very good. I mean, I don't have a tablet at all now, but at the time I had like a Galaxy Tab, and I remember playing, and it was a game to see whose tablet ran out first.
Yeah,
because the official line from Privateer Press was, if you run out of batteries during your game, then you automatically forfeit.
No way. I didn't know that.
It's who's
Brilliant.
stood nearest the phone charger wins.
Quality. Amazing. But yeah, suicide overnight.
So, and I think the downside of that is that I've noticed that a lot of the smaller tournament scenes for stuff like X-Wing and War Machine and Malifaux even, they had some pretty intense games days.
Yeah.
Have sort of died away, and that's just left Games Workshop and, I said, Fantasy Flight to a certain extent. Because I know X-Wing's pretty much done. I think they sort of finished X-Wing, and then I think they've sold it, I believe. But then the new one from Fantasy Flight is Star Wars Legion.
Yep.
And I'll mention that again. But I think what's happened is that this could just be, once again, just my anecdotal, but I'm the member of was a member of three different gaming groups. Yeah. Luton, Milton Keynes, and Bedford. Yeah. Now, Bedford Club has disbanded due to lack of interest, and all that was being played there was Games Workshop stuff at the end.
40k, wasn't it? Basically.
Pretty much just 40k. A few games of Age of Sigmar. Less said about that, the better. In Luton, they obviously closed for COVID, and they are kind of reopened at the moment, but there's not a lot of interest in keeping it open. They did a very good Blood Bowl league, but their core, like half their core, members were into their Magic the Gathering and D&D, which obviously you don't need to rent out a hall for.
No.
And Blood Bowl, to be honest, is easy played in separate homes.
Well, you can play that in the pub.
Play that down the pub. And then they had strong Age of Sigmar and sort of 40k presence as well. And they even enjoyed a bit of Warcry, so they did branch out a little bit, but still mostly within that Games Workshop thing. And then it said Magic and D&D, but they said there's not that much interest. I can see those guys disbanding, because there's no games. I don't think 40k has kind of got the thrall it used to have. Outside of tournament players, I don't think it's enough to keep people engaged and interested enough to go to these independent clubs every week. Paying their money.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, that's actually quite interesting, because we're obviously sort of talking about the state of the hobby, and you're just reeling off 3 clubs there, which look like
and then
they're gone.
So I was at the Milton Keynes Club this week. It's not a very big area, and there was a couple of games of 40k and one game of a Fantasy Flight large ship battle. I think it was the Star Wars Armada, something like that. And then I played a game of Stargrave, and they have got a few little indie games, but once again, nothing. People don't seem to be organising the events and the leagues and dedicating their time into one game like they used to, and I think that is hurting the sort of serious players. I don't think you're getting new serious players of anything, because I think we used to count ourselves as pretty serious War Machine players. I don't think anyone's
we did a few
grasping
tournaments, didn't we?
grasping onto that one game like they used to. And I think what's doing really well at the moment is board games, and I said in the Milton Keynes store, they make some money out of being a board games cafe. They sell food, you can rent a table, play board games. And the new store that's opening in Bedford that looks to be doing quite well successfully is the Geek Retreat. Shout out to those guys. And they've just set up a very successful looking shop doing the same, selling coffees and cake and letting you play interesting sort of board games. And they've got
so not
hundreds.
necessarily wargaming. Then it's more just gaming in general.
And I think there's massive. It's been seen as part of the whole being a geek's cool and acceptable now. I think it's part of that whole like Marvel and Star Wars, playing board games. It's a big cultural thing that's kind of taken off. But I think if anything, that's almost damaged in a way the hardcore wargamer. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what I can do, because I'm going to try and introduce some Stargrave into that scene.
Yeah,
and I think see if I can.
That's interesting. Yeah, that'd be good.
Try and
you have to report your findings. See if you can. Persuade them to get into it.
And so my other thing is, so 40k is the known thing. This shop opened. They're not dedicated as a war game shop, and they've put a 40k night on. I mean, it's because they know it's like Magic the Gathering. It's like Yu-Gi-Oh. There's going to be a dedicated player base wherever you go.
The thing is, for that sort of place though, is 40k is just impractical, because it's you need a big table, you need a big army. You're going to be there for 4-5 hours. It's just impractical. Whereas, really, for a company like that just want to make a bit of money on someone buying some drinks and some cake and play a game, they want them in and out by with 30 minutes, 40 to an hour. Yeah, well, they've
done a big push on their Blood Bowl as well. The Blood Bowl should do quite well, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
You turn it because you have to pay $3 or $4, £5, whatever it was a night. So the Blood Bowl should do them quite well. I should be there now actually, playing Blood Bowl, but doing this instead.
You're sitting here talking to me instead. That's why hobby's dying.
So everyone's podcasting instead of playing games.
Yeah.
That might actually be it.
We're all YouTubers now. That's the problem. Maybe that's it. I mean, actually, that actually brings me to a point of somewhere where the hobby has grown. Okay, and the hobby has definitely grown on YouTube. Okay, there is a big community out there, and for me, I sort of tap into a bit of both the sci-fi and fantasy and the historical. And what I will say on the historical side of things, albeit I feel like potentially it's something that could potentially die. It's not going to die out, maybe, but the player base is going to slow down. On YouTube, the community is very strong. Mm-hmm. So the people who are taking the time to record their painted miniatures, showing them off, at any level, they have fallen into this lovely community, and everyone's very supportive, and they're all really happy to get onto your video, comment, like, and all this kind of stuff, give you tips, and it has really grown. And when I first started doing my channel, I only knew a few of these historical gaming channels, and now there's hundreds of them. So a lot of them are jumping on YouTube and probably, like say, doing a lot of podcasts. There's plenty out there. So that's another big positive for the hobby. It's just a different outlet for the hobby. Maybe a lot more people aren't necessarily playing the games, but what they're doing they're collecting the miniatures, painting them, and showing them off in a different way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think there are more players of these games, of war games, stuff we like. I just don't think... I'm worried there's just not enough games being played.
Sure.
And I'm worried that if those games are being played, they're being played with your brother and your cousin, and not...
Yeah.
I'm not building the real life communities that maybe we had a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I think with the YouTube thing, I think there's been a massive explosion over the last 2 years for obvious reasons. Yeah. People have been trying to find a way to talk about this stuff without leaving their house.
Yeah.
And so it might change. We might all these people with their newfound enthusiasm might go out there. And as I said, we've got the first Oathmark event happening in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will be the first of many. Hopefully we'll have another one in spring and so on and so on, every 6 months or so, hopefully, which would be quite nice.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic, and it'd be great to, if you can, like say, create that community, which is what it needs. And this hobby, the hobby itself, thrives on community. You know, the camaraderie, having a beer, and having a chat and having a laugh and just rolling some dice. That ultimately, that's what it's about.
Yeah,
it's having fun. Okay, yeah, you get those people who take it very seriously. That's fine. But if that's how they enjoy it, that's how they enjoy it. It's the community that really helps them to do that. So they'll have their community where they can be competitive. There'll be a community over there that allows you to have fun and just have a beer and pretzel type game. It's just whether that community is willing to get out there, isn't it? I think that's what you're trying to say. Is it really? They're showing it on YouTube. That there is a community. It's just are people willing to get out and play? I think the answer is yes. I think people do want to get out and play. I think a lot of people suffer with not knowing enough people to play. Because at the end of the day, this is still a niche hobby, albeit it may be a bit more mainstream with, like, say, the geek culture and GW, but it's still very niche, especially like the historical side of things. I mean, God, you've got to look quite far to find someone who's going to be playing Napoleonics. You just will. Oh yeah.
But I mean, there is still, I think, dedicated clubs for that. I know there's one.
Yeah.
I know of two. I know of two. One in Bedford and one in out towards Luton that are dedicated to that sort of stuff. But they tend to run their events, I say, more sparsely, and that is a much older crowd. And I do wonder if they are getting new recruits. It's not a scene I've gone and hung around with in person, so it's sure. It's hard to say. We can't say that without actually going there and knowing. But my point is that. But the Bedford Gladiators, for instance, when I did meet them, they were an older crowd. Yeah. So that you'd have to see how it goes. I mean, I think Salute is a good indicator of the way things have been moving that way recently, actually, because 6 or 7 years ago, I don't think I'd have necessarily thought about going to Salute too much.
Well, Salute used to be just in a historical...
Yeah, and that never really grabbed my attention enough to go out. Well, I used to live a lot further away as well. Yeah. But it didn't seem to be worth my train ticket. Whereas, I mean, when did I start going? Whatever year it says on my mug.
2000 and... Well, it's been about, what, 6-7 years?
Yeah, I think it's about that. And I've, even since my first Salute, I've seen it gradually turn more and more towards the fantasy, to the point where the last Salute, I don't even recall seeing an awful lot. I mean, there's still the sort of small scale LED, stores that are just 1,000 tiny little baggies of 6mm soldiers in a low budget store.
There's plenty of them at Salute. There definitely is. But I'll tell you what,
they're getting somewhat overshadowed, and I think that brings me kind of onto some of the hopeful side of things.
Yep.
So I was gonna mention two things. So one, I've been alluding to this sort of Fantasy Flight and Star Wars Legion. Now I think because of the stores where this stuff's getting played these days, the sort of board game cafe, and because the recognisable idea is Star Wars. Yeah, and it's not like X-Wing where it's kind of ships, which is a bit more like, do you reckon,
Yeah, it's
You-
got
you have to
there's an IP to it, isn't there?
Yeah, you have to be a fan to recognise
Yeah.
an A wing and a Y wing. Whereas I think
Agreed. Yeah.
most people can see that's Darth Vader and some stormtroopers.
Yeah.
In 28mm scale, that is Darth Vader and stormtroopers. How can I? And they see that play, they see the boxes, and I think that's a big pull. I think that Star Wars Legion is doing a lot for the hobby in a very different way. So X-Wing did a lot, got people on board that were board gamers, pre-painted minis, got them playing games. Whereas I think Legion is getting people playing 28mm games, painting.
Yeah. You've got the same actually with the is it Song of Ice and Fire game, or the Games of Thrones game that's out now. I know that the Mini Maniac, if you follow his channel, he's probably one of the biggest. He's one of the biggest.
I've not seen as much
YouTubers out
that
there,
one.
but he is banging on about it. So he's got a subscriber count of over 200,000, something like that.
Right.
So he's banging on about it. So I imagine that's going to be a game that's going to really kick off quite a bit. People are going to fall into that. And
that's another big publisher as well, isn't it? I think
exactly, and it's the same principle, but it's not like a fantasy game that's been just made up by a company. It's got its own IP already.
It's Cool Mini or Not, which we mentioned earlier. Who went from not very known, recognizable company to a pretty big publisher. And once again, you see those box sets in comic book shops, in the Magic the Gathering shops, in these board games cafes. I think, again, because it's a recognizable IP.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. So both the Star Wars, the Game of Thrones, they're massive. They're big things. They're on TV. People see it all the time. It's very relatable. It's very recognizable. It's a great way. It's a great way to get people into a hobby of painting miniatures.
And outside of Games Workshop, which
they are
is interesting. I mean, neither of those games appeal to me. I don't know if that's maybe because they're not aimed at me particularly, but I like the fact that they are getting people who who wouldn't necessarily go to Games Workshop, but still sitting down painting miniatures, playing war games. So that's quite hopeful to me. And even if it is these sort of bigger, sort of what's the word, more polished, like manufacturers and publishers.
Yes,
I mean, you can buy Song of Ice and Fire miniatures on Amazon, apparently. Just stick that in Google. So it's so that's quite hopeful. And then
it's a big game.
And then my second one is going to be pretty much everything North Star's doing at the moment, which again a few years ago was North Star military figures, almost purely historical. A few years ago, so now they had obviously the big hit with Frostgrave.
North Star are just doing so well with their miniatures. They're just really nice miniatures. And I mean, and they're pushing like GW with the quality of what you get. The character in the miniatures you get, the style of them. I'm really impressed with them actually. Yeah,
and I think some of their plastic kits, they're not obviously they're I don't think their plastic kits are where Malifaux and GW's plastic kits are, but I don't think they need to be either. I think they're where GW's plastic kits were when I liked them. So sort of 2000.
It says something, doesn't it?
Sort of mid 2005. When they were doing the sort of the Empire range and the and the Chaos Warriors with the two little fists.
Are you saying, James, when GW had Charm?
I think so. Yeah. I think that might be it. And I think the plastic. I mean, they've knocked out they've probably about a dozen different plastic kits for Frostgrave. They've done 6 or 7 now or 6 for Oathmark now, I think. They just did 3 for Stargrave. And there's always more. There's an Oathmark release plan, disappearing off into infinity, I believe. I believe they intend to do a plastic kit to cover every troop type in the box. In fact, I believe they intend to do a miniature, be it like metal or resin, for every miniature in the book, which is a good goal.
Right. Wow, didn't know that.
There was a podcast. Check out the Oathwire podcast. I can't remember what episode it is, but Matt does a interview with Nick Eyre from North Star,
right.
And it's quite enlightening.
Nice.
But I think the twin sort of forces of North Star producing these beautiful miniatures, and Joe McCullough writing Frostgrave, I said, which was such a massive hit, and then I think Oathmark is building up such a good community online. I really hope that online community can transfer to like the physical real world.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel like Oathmark is almost there as being a big game. It's almost there, but it's not there. If that makes sense. It needs to crack another. It needs to jump another level before it can because what's going to happen is as soon as Fantasy comes out, which it's going to come back again from GW, the user base from Oathmark could dwindle. That's my fear. Just my. It's not that I want that to happen. Not at all. It's just my fear that will happen.
I think Oathmark probably scratches for the majority. I don't doubt that some people might jump ship. We'll have to see how the Oathmark community goes, because there's no more expansions planned now for Oathmark, so it's kind of is what it is now for us to a certain extent.
Yeah, sure.
But I think the people that are gonna jump back, the people that have replaced Fantasy with something and that would be tempted back, would be the Kings of War players, because I don't think Kings of War is doing as. Once again, it used to have this huge scene that I don't think is quite as dedicated as it was. And I know the tournament players are 100%. Big Kings of War fans are big Kings of War fans, and they are dedicated. And I can see some of that as well moving back. I mean, a lot of it depends on what the old world ends up being.
I think you're right. I mean, I'm talking very, I'm surmising a massive amount. I mean, even if it comes back to a little bit of like it was back in the day, you might see people disappear. I mean, who knows how it's going to come back? It might come back like a reboot of Age of Sigmar or something. I don't know.
Well, I think what appeals, what people like about Oathmark is the more down to earth setting, and I think they like the charm of it.
The low fantasy,
and I think they like the way the rules work, the fairly nice sort of mechanics, simple mechanics. I think that's a lot of what people like about it, and I think that no matter what the old world is, it's not going to be that. It's not going to have the same charm, because it's going to have. I said it's even if it doesn't have the full Age of Sigmar aesthetic, it's going to have. I mean, from the artwork they've released already, it's going to have that World of Warcraft generic sort of computer game fantasy look, 100%.
Yeah. It's not going to be like it used to be.
And I think
a lot of people will be disappointed with that.
And I think it's going to be a Games Workshop rule set, and they've never done a good job of making things simple and smart and tidy.
And one thing I will say, I really enjoy playing Oathmark. Oathmark is just a good game.
Yeah,
I like the D10 functionality of it. I enjoy the movement. I enjoy, like say, the simplicity of it. You haven't got loads of special rules to remember. It really is a nice rank and flank game.
I think what it is that you can play a game of it. You can have an old natter with whoever you're playing against, and the game doesn't get in the way of you having fun and playing a game.
Yeah,
but you don't have to spend too long.
But you can be competitive if you want to be.
Oh, definitely, and I think there's plenty of tactics, and I think there's there's a lot to do with army composition. I said the Oathwire podcast again. I mentioned them again. Bring up a lot of like interesting tactics and combinations.
Sure.
And I think there's there's like 100 spells, different spells you can take that none of them are game breaking. It's all just quite subtle. And then I think where the game also excels is going to be the campaign type stuff and the building, the sort of nation building and stuff. I think that's there's a lot of depth to get into while still keeping it nice and tidy, which I said is not something that I can see Games Workshop doing. I think I've played pretty much all the Games Workshop rule sets, and they're anything but they're that. So it's
true.
If you're playing a Games Workshop game, you're gonna have to have the rule book open next to you. It's just the way they do it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. So then, James, right. With that, shall we bring up a conclusion? We've waffled on now for a little while. So, James, if I ask you the question, is wargaming or miniature wargaming in a healthy state, what would your one-word answer be?
Maybe.
Love it. On the fence. Good one.
I think
After all that, we've
I think-
decided maybe it's.
there's a lot of fresh stuff and there's a lot of enthusiasm.
There is. Agreed.
I think it just needs to translate into in-person communities, and we'll be there.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think there's a lot of activity online. The YouTube community is fantastic. So there's definitely growth there. There is, like I mentioned at the start, there's growth with all these new little companies that come in that are, on Kickstarter and all these different campaigns. But at the same time, I think there could be a lack of youngsters coming into the hobby, especially in certain areas, and that can be where it falters, in my opinion, especially maybe on the historical side of things.
Actually,
So-
there was one point I kind of forgot actually that I did want to mention. There was a one to ponder over. So let us know down in the comments what you think to this.
Yeah,
I think what it might be down to is that games over the last however long, ever since wargaming started, have got simpler. Now we're praising the fact that Oathmark is
we are.
fairly stripped down, but I think Oathmark's a good example of getting it simple and getting it, but still keeping it deep. I think Kings of War failed with that for me, and although I like Stargrave and Frostgrave, I think they are in a lot of ways a bare framework. They're very simple.
dumbed down.
And I wonder if people are ever going to have the passion that they had for Warhammer 6th edition.
Yeah,
And
I'm with you. I know
for
I
a
know where
game
you're
that
going with
simple.
this, yeah.
I'm wondering if that is
Yeah.
going to give people the dedication that they had to War Machine and old Warhammer to these new, simple, almost throwaway, disposable games. So that'd be
Yeah,
my
that's
sort of question to you guys. Do you think
Yeah.
that the modern ways we're designing games is causing less sort of passion for them?
That's a good question. Good question. So comments below, guys. Let us know what you think. So, James, then that really brings us on to our recommendation of the week.
Recommendation of the week, yeah.
So, do we have a little jingle for that? Recommendation of the week. Something like that. Really quite cool.
Maybe.
Work on that, mate.
I'll work
Think
on
about
that.
it.
See if we can manage that for next week.
You just got to press a little button and the jingle
yeah.
goes. That'd be awesome if you did that. That'd be absolutely bloody amazing.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Think about it.
And then
And it
So-
can't be death metal. Okay, it's not a death metal sound. I knew that's what you're thinking. I could tell.
yeah, I'll completely change my plans then. Yeah, we'll see what I can do.
Anyway, go for it, James.
So as we
Give
said,
us
we'll
your
take turns with this one, and so this week my recommendation is going to be Imitation of Life Miniatures. They are a small company. It's a one-man company as far as I know. A guy called Sonny. He sells printed miniatures. You can actually buy physical miniatures for him if people aren't down with the 3D printing yet. But I'm a member of his Patreon, and I've been buying a couple of his minis off of My Mini Factory, and I'll put links in the description for all this stuff. And he also designed a lot of the 3D minis for the Dunkeldorf Kickstarters. If you're not aware of those, they were one of the few sort of companies making townsfolk, sort of their sort of Warhammer styled townsfolk, and he designed a lot of those 3D miniatures, which is when the guy came on my radar. And this is his own company, and he has made some stunning sort of sci-fi miniatures and post-apocalyptic miniatures that I'll be using for Stargrave. And a few years ago I said that I didn't like, just straight up was never going to like 3D sculpted miniatures, and I think as these artists that learnt and can sculpt in green stuff have moved to 3D and taken that skill with them, I think they are actually producing some really nice characterful stuff. I always said that you couldn't get sort of character into a 3D sculpt, but yeah, Sonny's one of the artists that I think is managing that, along with Alex at Warplock, and he's producing some really nice miniatures that I've been enjoying over the last couple of weeks. And his Patreon is a bargain, and I can't remember how much. He doesn't put a lot out on it, but it's £1 a month for just a handful of minis.
That is cheap. That is cheap.
And so I don't mind just leaving that going in the background, and when a few more of these really nice minis sort of drop into my box. This month it's been a selection of Robo Hounds, and last month there was a really, really nice multi-part bounty hunter that I'll try and remember to put on the screen. And yeah, I've just been really impressed, and it's part of my current discovery that 3D designed miniatures, I think there's a whole new wave of artists that are really making them work. And my conversion
fantastic
to 3D printing. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, I'm printing these models. The models deserve it, and I've been printing them still quite quickly. So 28mm model in 3 hours, high resolution. I'm using the Frozon 4K if anyone's interested, resin on a Mars 2 Pro, and the quality is as good as stuff that TT Combat or Mantic have been making. Better, in fact, because there's no mold lines. Recommendation for Imitation of Life miniatures. That was
perfect. Guys, please check them out. There's a link below the video. Please head over there, give them some support, and like James says, £1 is so cheap. £1 a month, it's worth it. If you've got your own 3D printer, get on it.
Yeah, £1.20 technically, because that's ex-VAT. But
okay, well, there you go. You'll find out. You'll work it out, I'm sure. But right, guys, I think that really brings us at the end of our first ever podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you're going to stick around for the next one. Like we was mentioning, please throw comments below. Let us know what you think. And if there's any topics you want us to talk about, that would be great. It's a great way of doing it. Put it in the comments below. And we can most certainly look at throwing that as part of our main topic as we ramble on and talk about gaming and hobby stuff. So, James, thank you very much, mate.
No worries. It was an absolute pleasure, and I fully enjoyed our first episode. And just to mirror what Jonny says, ideas for topics, get them in the comments. Even ideas for recommendations if you've rolled across something really good recently. Yeah,
definitely. We're open to look at all new things.
Yeah,
definitely.
And as I said, your thoughts on whether or not the hobby is doomed.
I'd love to see your comments. Cheers.
All right. Be well, guys.
Catch you later.
They were easily led.